Straight Shift with the Car Chick, the podcast that's all about cars, buying, selling, fixing, and driving, and sometimes pretty fast if you're the car chick. Now, here she is.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Straight Shift. Summer is almost here. Here in the Carolinas, we only have 3 seasons, not 4, like many other places in the country. We have summer, which is also known as hot and humid season, and we have fall, and then we have this season called pollen, and we're finally getting to the end of pollen season. It's been raining like crazy all spring. I think that we have had something like 70% of the Fridays and weekends over the last few months have been raining. It's driving me nuts, but it's starting to clear out. Our schools, a lot of them had their graduation ceremonies this past weekend, so we are definitely heading into summer. And for many families, that means road trip. So today I want to talk about how do you prepare your vehicle for a summer road trip, especially if you're taking a longer road trip. Here in the Carolinas, or at least, here in the Charlotte area where I live, we're really lucky. We got so many beautiful things around us. We're just a couple of hours, 2 to 4 hours from the Smoky Mountains, the Blue Ridge Parkway. We're 4 to 6 hours from really any of the beautiful Carolina beaches. A lot of folks, make the longer road trip, 12 hours or so down to Florida. So we have a lot to see in this area. Or you might be taking a road trip further away to see a part of the United States that you and your family haven't visited before. It's a great way to see this beautiful country from our roads. But you want to make sure that your vehicle is in good condition, because nothing sucks more on a road trip than being stuck, broken down on the side of the road. Road trips are supposed to be a vacation, and vacations are supposed to be fun and relaxing. As much as that's possible with, long drive with a lot of kids in the car, but you know what I'm talking about. And a great way to not start out your vacation is with a breakdown on the side of the road. So here are some things that you can do to your vehicle to make it safe. And then a little bit later in the podcast, I'm going to talk about just some other logistics, things to put in the car, how to keep safe, some good driving tips, and how to keep yourselves entertained on the road trip. So the first thing that you want to do is make an appointment with your dealership or your favorite ASE certified shop at least a week before you head out on your vacation to have them check it out. Tell them that you need a pre-road trip safety inspection. Let them know where you're going on your road trip, how long you're going to be gone, and how many miles you're planning to put on the car. I mean, obviously be safe and don't give them too many details, but they do need to know the conditions that you're going to be driving under and how many miles you're going to be putting on the car over that time so that they know what to recommend. Now is a good time to go ahead and just get that oil and oil filter changed, especially if you're going to be doing a road trip where you're going to be putting several thousand miles on the car. Just go ahead and start out with fresh, clean oil and a fresh filter. That's going to be the best thing for your engine. And then you won't have to worry about trying to find a place to get an oil change, when you're on the other side of the country and you don't know anybody and you're in the middle of your vacation. Have them also go ahead and change the air filter. That way, you're going to be getting the best airflow both through the engine and through the cabin. Those are 2 separate filters, your engine air filter and your cabin air filter. That will help make sure that your engine operates most efficiently. It's getting the air that it needs because your engine also needs to breathe. That's part of that whole gas air mixture that gives us combustion. And when you have a clogged engine air filter and your engine can't breathe, it's not as efficient. Kind of like, when we're in pollen season here and we can't breathe, our bodies get tired faster. So it's really the same thing with your engine. So get all those filters changed. It's also a really good idea to go ahead and flush that coolant if you haven't done so in a while. Make sure that all the fluids in your car are fresh and clean and topped off. Cars overheating is one of the most common road trip breakdowns that you see, because not only is the car working hard because you're driving a long distance and you've got it loaded down with, all the crap that you're bringing with you on this road trip, but also it's hot out there. So the air that's flowing through the engine is not going to be as cool. So it just allows your engine the opportunity to overheat more easily. So having the cooling system checked out, making sure that fluid is fresh and full, and have them check all the belts and hoses in there as well. Even check your coolant reservoir. So many of those things are plastic in our cars these days, and don't even get me started on why I think that's not the best idea. But make sure there aren't any cracks in those. I've gone through a couple of coolant reservoirs in Maggie, my '04 Mini Cooper, because it's plastic and it tends to get brittle with all the heat that goes on in the engine compartment. And so it's cracked a few times and I've had to replace that. So making sure all your fluid, your transmission fluid, your power steering fluid, even have them flush the brake fluid to make sure that that's clear. And while they're at it, you need them to check your brakes anyway. Make sure you have good friction material on those brake pads and make sure that the rotors are in good shape. They're not warped. They're not too thin. They don't have a bunch of ridges in them. If it's time to change the brakes or getting close to, just go ahead and do it. It's so much better to start out a road trip, especially a long one, with as many fresh parts as you can on your car. And have them check the tires. You know how I preach about tires if you have been listening to this podcast over the last year and a half, but tires are so important. Make sure that your mechanic knows about how much weight you're going to be adding to the car, or just tell them, hey, this is a road trip. We're loading the car up with, half of everything we own in the kitchen sink to take with us, so that the mechanic knows that the car is going to be more fully loaded down than it is just on your normal everyday driving. That way he or she can let you know what you need to do to the tire pressures. You might need just a little bit more air to handle that extra weight, because the heavier the car, the more it's pushing down on those tires, and those sidewalls start to kind of flex and push out a little bit. Having a little more air in the tire will help keep that structural integrity of the tire to reduce a risk of a blowout. It will also make sure that you have the optimal friction patch between the tire and the road, and that means that you're going to get the best possible gas mileage. Not that a fully loaded minivan or SUV, especially if you put one of those, what I call a hamburger box on top, so that you can bring even more stuff with you. You're not going to be aerodynamic, so at least have your tires help as much as they can in maximizing your fuel efficiency so that you don't spend your entire vacation budget on gas. Have them also check all the lights on your car. Make sure your headlights are nice and clear. If they are starting to get cloudy, this is a good time to do a headlight restoration, or if that's not possible, it doesn't work, fork over the bucks to get new headlights, because especially if you're going to be doing some night driving, not only do you need to be able to see, you need to be seen by others. That's one of the most important things when you're talking about safe driving. Be able to see clearly and clearly be seen. Make sure all of your brake lights are working. Make sure your turn signals are working. And remember to use them. All these things are going to help you be safer on the road. Check your wipers. This is a good time to just go ahead and get fresh wipers, windshield, and if you have a rear wiper, because that's going to help you, move rain, because you may be driving through a rainy area. You're probably going to go through a lot of windshield wiper fluid, because one of the things that is guaranteed on a road trip is that you're going to get hit by a lot of bugs. So your windshield is going to get kind of nasty. So make sure you've got fresh and full wiper fluid in there to be able to clean your windshield frequently. It drives me crazy in my car, Maggie, my little '04 Mini Cooper S, because in a Mini, the windshield wiper fluid reservoir is about the size of a teacup. So I'm constantly having to fill that up. So just bring an extra gallon of wiper fluid with you in your vehicle, and that's just going to make your life so much easier. Make sure that there aren't any loose cables or wires, and make sure the air conditioning system is working well. There's going on a summer. I can't imagine going on a summer road trip without the air conditioning working. And I realize that is such a first world problem, but I really believe that air conditioning is the greatest invention in the history of the world. So make sure that system is working correctly. It may be time, if you have an older car, to have to upgrade to the new Freon systems, because they keep changing that on us. Listen to your mechanic's recommendation on whether or not you need to do that, if it's possible to do that. The older stuff is getting more and more expensive and harder to find. So just make sure you listen to the recommendation, and obviously go to a mechanic that you trust to tell you the truth about those things. It's also a good idea to go ahead and fully clean your car inside and out. I realize that on the road trip, it's going to get dirty inside and out anyway, but starting out with it dirty is just going to put a damper on the whole road trip. And it seems weird to get the car detailed before you leave on a road trip, and you don't have to do a fancy detail, but I just recommend get it cleaned up, because that's going to help, identify any other problems that you might have on the car. It's amazing, really, the things that you see when your car is clean. And if you're going on a long road trip, if you have a newer car especially, and you're kind of dreading the possibility of getting a whole bunch of bugs hitting your car and damaging it, the little bug body acid eats through your paint, you're going to get hit with rock chips. It's just the reality of driving on American roads, especially long distances. So you might want to consider having a protective film put over the front of the car. They used to be called invisible bras, because they used to just kind of cover just the front of the car, just around the headlights and maybe a third of the hood. And you can still do that. But you can also even get it put on the entire, your bumper, the whole hood, even your front quarter panels, if you really want to protect the car. And that's not a bad idea to do anyway, just to protect the car, because these days with traffic and the condition of our roads, rock chips, etc., are just a fact of life. So you want to keep the car's paint looking nice. It might be worth it to invest in some of that protective film. Make sure that you do all these things, that you make this appointment with your dealership or your ASE certified technician at least a week before your road trip. It's amazing how many people I have seen come in and say, "Oh, we're leaving tomorrow. Can you check over my car?" And then when the mechanic finds something that really needs to be addressed, but they can't get the part right away, we can get the part tomorrow, or it's going to take a couple days to get the part to fix it. And now you're in a bind, because what do? You're supposed to leave on your road trip tomorrow, but there's this thing wrong with your car, but nobody can get the part for it right away. So you need to give the mechanic at least a week to, if they do find something, to be able to get the right parts in and then make the repairs or do the maintenance items on your vehicle. So please don't wait until the day before, or you'd be amazed. I've actually seen people come in. The car is fully packed. They have the hamburger box on top. The car is packed to the gills with umbrellas and beach chairs and coolers and luggage. They have literally left to go on the road trip, but let's just swing by the shop and have them check it out before we leave, with all the kids and all of our junk. I mean, that's just crazy, because if you find something, now you're starting out your vacation with a broken car. So do yourselves a favor and do your poor mechanic a favor and schedule that appointment at least a week to 2 weeks beforehand, so that you have time to make any necessary repairs before you head out on the road. I'm going to take a really quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some other logistics, things to bring with you, what to include in an emergency car kit, as well as how you can make that road trip safe and fun. I'll be right back after this. Do you hate car shopping? Do you worry about being taken advantage of, or about finding the right car at a fair price? Buying a car can be a frustrating and time-consuming experience. But what if you could get a great deal without having to do a ton of research, without having to haggle, and without the fear of buying a lemon? You can. As your personal car shopper, the Car Chick will help you pick the perfect car based on your unique lifestyle, budget, and personality. She'll handle all of the legwork and negotiating for you. All you have to do is sign the papers and take the keys. It's that easy. To learn how the Car Chick can save you time, money, and hassle on your next car purchase, give us a call at 888-575-2138. That's 888-575-2138. Or visit us on the web at thecarchick.com.
Where the rubber meets the road.
Nice to meet you. Love your asphalt.
Hey, nice treads.
It's Straight Shift with the Car Chick.
Welcome back to the Straight Shift. We are talking about how to prepare for that summer road trip, especially if it's going to be a longer road trip to see some of the beautiful areas of our country. And I talked about getting your car into your dealership or your mechanic to get a pre-road trip inspection at least a week before you leave. And this is a good time also to go ahead and put together a summer emergency kit. I've talked in the past about a winter kit and what to keep with you in the car on a winter road trip or just in general, but it's not a bad idea to have a summer emergency kit as well. And some of the items that you want to include are going to be the same. So if you've already got them in your car, great, leave them there. But it may be time to swap out for a couple different things. If you're going on a long road trip, I'm a big believer in having some sort of emergency roadside assistance, whether that comes with your car because you have a newer car, or maybe you bought a certified pre-owned car and the certified pre-owned warranty includes roadside assistance, or if you invest in, something like a AAA membership. It's just a good idea to have because you really never know what could happen no matter how well you prepare for a road trip. So having someone that you can call and know that they're going to come to your aid is a good idea. So, go ahead and get that membership now if you don't have one before your road trip, and take your card with you, or at least put the phone number for that roadside assistance. I put one on I have an address label thingy that I put on all my folders and stuff just because you can't read my handwriting. So I have this little label maker. Put the phone number for the roadside assistance, on that or just on some sort of sticker, and just stick it to the inside of your glove box. That way it's always there and you know where it is. So if you do have trouble, you can just pop that glove box open and go, okay, here's their phone number. Come save me. So that's just a nice little trick. Make sure that you have a tire iron and jack in the car if your car comes with a spare tire. Newer cars don't have a spare, even some older ones like, I have a Mini Cooper. Where the heck are you going to put a spare tire on a Mini Cooper? So I've never had that, but it's still a good idea to keep a jack and a tire iron in the car in case you do have to swap something out on the road. Speaking of a spare tire, if you do have one, make sure that when you had your mechanic do that pre-road trip inspection, make sure they are specifically checking the spare tire. That's one of the most neglected things in a vehicle, and you never want to, get a flat tire on the road and you go to get the spare out to find that the spare is also flat, or it's old and it's cracked and it's no longer holding air, or it's not safe to drive on. So make sure that spare tire, if you have one, is also in good condition. Bring some towels and some rags for cleaning your windshield, or just for cleaning up any spills that may happen in the car, because who goes on a road trip without eating and drinking in the car? Am I right? So just bring some towels for that. Make sure you've got some towels to clean the windshield, just in case you have to stop and not at a gas station and you need to have some wipes for the windshield or to clean anything off the car. Bring a plastic funnel. I know that sounds weird, but just in case you have to add water to the coolant system, or you need to, for some reason, put more oil in the car because a leak develops when you're on your road trip, you've got that funnel to be able to more easily put fluids in the car. Don't bring the funnel out of the kitchen that you use for food. Make sure you get a funnel that's designed for automotive so you can pick that up at your local auto parts store dirt cheap. No big deal. Speaking of water, bring some extra water with you, both for drinking, because you just want to be able to keep hydrated properly on your road trip. But if you do end up getting stranded on the side of the road and you have to wait for roadside assistance, everybody's going to get hot, especially if the car's not running anymore. You can't run that air conditioner. You want to make sure that nobody gets dehydrated if you have to wait an hour or 2 hours in the heat in order for help to arrive. So have enough water for everybody in the car. Obviously, have some snacks. You can't road trip without snacks anyway. But also have some water that you can put into the cooling system of your car if you need to. Whether that's an extra gallon of water, or you bring a bucket where you can fill up at a rest stop, fill up in a river, in a lake, depending on just how far off the beaten path you're planning to go, but have a way to be able to put water into the cooling system of the car if it overheats and you don't have any other options. Always a good idea to bring a flashlight. That's just something that you should keep in your car all the time anyway. Keep a flashlight, keep flares, and in my world, you keep bungee cords in the car at all times, because even if you're just going to the grocery store, unless you've got one of those cool cargo bags or there's the little hooks on the backs of your third row seats, like in a minivan or an SUV where you can hang your groceries, that's great. I always have to bungee everything together and then tie it down. Partly because I have no other way to really contain it in my car, but also my driving style tends to fling things around on the inside of the car. So I just naturally carry bungee cords with me to strap things down. But that's a good idea to do with all your stuff that you're packing in the car anyway. Make sure that it is stable, that it's not going to go flying around in the car, that you're not going to have an umbrella. If you slam on the brakes, having an umbrella or a beach chair go flying forward in the car, that could risk hitting and injuring someone. So just tether everything down and bring some extra bungee cords with you. Worst case, you can always, bungee the kids to the top of the car if they're driving you crazy. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But it's a good idea to keep in the car, along with a small tool kit that just has, some basic screwdrivers, some wrenches of different sizes, pliers, maybe even a hammer. It's just not a bad idea to have that just in case you need it, especially if you're reasonably handy with some things on the car. If you can do any repairs on your own, just a quick fix to then be able to get you to the nearest service station, that's a good idea to be able to have that stuff in the car with you. I also recommend that you always keep a first aid kit in the car just all the time. You never know when, you're just going to, start bleeding or, cut yourself on something. And it's just a good idea to have that in the car with you. I took my mother sofa shopping this weekend, and she's at the age where she bleeds really easily, and literally we got halfway down the road and she looks down and her finger's bleeding profusely at one of the knuckles. We have no idea what she did, but it was simple. We just opened the glove box. There's a first aid kit in there and she was able to put on a Band-Aid. But that's especially true if you're going on a road trip, because you never know what could happen. The kids could be fighting in the back seat and injure each other, or if you do have to pop the hood and look at something under the hood, you could always hurt yourself. So just keep a first aid kit in the car. It's super easy to do. Make sure that your owner's manual is handy so that you can consult it if something does break down, or you're not sure if something is a problem, or one of those weird lights comes on the dashboard and you're like, what the heck does that mean? You can go back and look at one of my other podcasts. I actually did a full podcast on those pesky dashboard lights. So you always want to have the owner's manual with you so that you can identify any problems with the car. And bring sunscreen. I can't imagine going on a summer road trip without bringing sunscreen, especially since, I'm so pale I could, I glow in the dark and burn easily. But if you get stranded, you want that sunscreen to be in a place that's easily accessible, not buried in a suitcase, underneath a pile of other suitcases and a bunch of junk that you can't get to easily. So just keep a little of it. I keep a kind of travel size of sunscreen in my glove box at all times. Now I want to quickly talk about some things that will help make the road trip a little bit more fun and safe, because, one of the things that can make a road trip dangerous is the driver getting tired, getting fatigued, getting distracted, and quite frankly, getting bored, which also leads to fatigue and distraction. So, one thing you want to do is just kind of help keep the car reasonably clean as you go on this road trip, because otherwise you'll go a little bit crazy, especially if you have any amount of OCD or wanting things to be clean. Keep a little bag, just take one of those small garbage bags with you, or a few of them. You can take a Pringles container and cut a hole in that plastic top, just cut a slit, and then stuff the Pringles container with a bunch of plastic bags from the grocery store, and then, start pulling one of them out through that top a little bit. Then you have, this nice container of plastic garbage bags that you can pull out whenever you need, but that keeps them contained, and that, box is easy to store in the net on the back of one of your seats or just somewhere in the car, just so that you have a good stash of plastic garbage bags. Trust me, that will help with your sanity and help keep the car clean as you go along this road trip. I talked earlier about, joking about how people come in with a hamburger box on the top of the car because they're bringing even more stuff than can fit in the vehicle on its own. Those things can be really great for road trips. And if you do have a large family and you do need to bring a lot of stuff with you, sometimes you have no other choice but to have one of those extra luggage containers on the top of the car. I still say they look like the old hamburger boxes, but they're not fuel efficient. So if you can avoid putting one of those on top of your car, those things can literally tank your gas mileage because it just really interrupts the airflow over the car, and your, being streamlined makes you more fuel efficient. Those hamburger boxes have gotten more streamlined and efficient over time, so the air does flow better over them, but they still significantly reduce your fuel efficiency. So if you can pack more efficiently and avoid that, you don't necessarily have to bring the kitchen sink with you when you go on this road trip. You'll really think about what makes sense to bring with us versus what can we buy along the way or buy when we get there. Because, there's always convenience stores, there's grocery stores, there's Walmarts, there's Targets. Unless you're going camping or going someplace really rural, think about what you really need to bring with you and what you can source once you get there to help keep from carrying all this junk in your car. If you have a car that actually still has a key to it, a lot of cars these days, have the keyless entry, keyless ignition. And one of the benefits of those is it's really hard, if not impossible, to lock your keys in the car. But if you have an older car, make sure you keep a spare key for the car and keep that in your wallet, keep it in your purse. My mom keeps one on a big safety pin pinned to the inside of her purse because she has locked herself out of her car a lot in the past. She doesn't do it so much anymore. But, this weekend when I took her sofa shopping, I was the idiot. And as I was getting her walker out of the trunk of the car, I set the keys to the Corolla in the little well in the trunk and then promptly closed the trunk. So I locked the keys in the trunk of her car. So fortunately, she had a spare key pinned to the inside of her purse, and we were able to open the trunk and get the other set of keys out. So you know what? Happens to the best of us folks. So always keep that spare key on your person so that you don't lock yourself out of your car. Bring with you all the necessary charging cables for your phone. Bring those USB cables, your camera chargers, your GoPro charger if you have one, because a GoPro is a great thing to take on a family road trip. And have some of that, what I call extra electricity, the extra battery packs for, charging your phone in case you don't have enough chargers in the car, or the kids want to be able to run their mobile devices and run out of electricity in their natural battery quickly. Just getting that portable electricity, as I call it, they're so inexpensive these days. So it's a good idea to have a couple of those with you in the car as well. And some of them even can double as a jump box for your car itself. So it's a good idea to bring with you on a road trip, in that emergency kit. If you have an air compressor, I have a small one that we picked up at Stanley Black & Decker a few years ago, any small air compressor. So if you do need to put air in your tires, you can put a little air in your tires until you can get it to a service station. If your battery dies, you have a jump box in the car so that you can jump that battery quickly and not necessarily have to wait for the roadside assistance to come. And a lot of those little jump boxes now, they've become a lot cheaper. You just have to be careful because some of them are really cheap and don't actually work. So beware of the ones that you can buy online, dirt cheap from China. But you can get them at your local auto parts store and they can tell you which ones are good. And very often they double as that extra electricity for your cell phone and can charge that as well. Don't forget to download favorite episodes of your podcast or whatever to keep yourselves entertained. And you want to stay safe and alert while you're driving, especially on a longer road trip. If you're just going, 3 or 4 hours to the beach, that's usually not a big deal. Most people can handle a 3 or 4 hour drive by themselves, without any problem. and I start to get a little bit achy. So I actually have a pad in my car. I think we got it at, Walmart or whatever for like $20, but it goes over my seat and plugs in, and it provides heat because I don't have heated seats. But it also vibrates and kind of massages my lower back. So that just helps me because my back tends to stiffen up on those drives. So that's not a bad thing to have with you. But if you're going on a longer road trip, be sure you rotate the driving responsibilities if that's possible with the people that you have in the car. Because it doesn't take but more than an hour or two for the driver to kind of start getting in this zone. And next thing you know, your brain has stopped paying attention. You're on autopilot. You're bored. And so you're not really paying attention, especially if it's a long, straight road. I remember literally driving across I-80 through Nebraska when my dad and I took me to college, 100 years ago. And let me tell you, I-80 through Nebraska has got to be the most boring thing ever. So, we played some games and did some things to stay alert. So be sure if you're a passenger in the car, engage the driver, have a conversation, do something to make sure that they are not falling asleep at the wheel, that their brain stays engaged. But be sure to balance that with, don't distract them too much because their primary brain function needs to be on the driving, but do what you can to help them stay alert. And I don't recommend loading up on a boatload of caffeine because that just makes you jittery. It impacts your reflexes. It impacts your decision making. So leave the energy drinks at home. Don't drink a lot of coffee because then that's just going to make you have to pee more anyway. So manage your alertness through keeping your brain active. You can take your tongue, push it to the roof of your mouth and hold it there for a few seconds. That actually stimulates a nerve bundle that's located on your upper palate, kind of that soft area on the top of your mouth. We actually use that in racing as a way to re-energize our nervous system. It really works. It actually helps, wake you up, bring you alert because it hits those nerves and they're like, oh, wait a minute, we're doing something. So that's just a cool little trick. And just swap out the driving as much as possible so that you don't get tired. Take breaks frequently, especially on a long road trip. If you're hydrating properly, your body will tell you need to take those breaks anyway, but get out and stretch, get the blood flowing. You can actually, just like being on an airplane, you can be at a risk of blood clots just driving in a car for a long period of time because you're not moving around and the blood is not circulating. So take advantage of those rest stop areas. Let the kids get out and run around for a little bit. Everybody take a bathroom break and just stretch. Do a few little yoga positions and get the muscles loose and get the blood flowing. And finally, play some road trip games. Don't just let the kids sit in the back with their mobile devices and their headphones on. Although some of that can be a really nice break from them and give you some time to have some peace and quiet, listen to the music you want to listen to, and maybe have, a reasonable conversation with your spouse or your partner. But this is a good time for the family to be together. The road trip is part of the vacation, and it's a great time to engage with each other, disconnect from the devices, and even have some educational opportunities. Road trips can be educational as well as fun. I remember as a kid, we would play, the license plate bingo game, other forms of bingo with having to identify different, like silos or cow or horse or any landmarks that you might see, having a bingo card for that. Or our favorite game was playing Name That Car. So all the other cars you see on the road, you have to name that car, and you can create a bingo game out of that. My husband and I tend to play the Olympic level version of that, and we actually have to accurately identify the year, make, and model of the car. But that's kind of Olympic level, and we're crazy that way. But that's a great way to have some quality time with your family. Let it be educational and entertaining at the same time, and keep everybody in a good mood and reduce the chance of hearing, "Mom, are we there yet?" Because believe me, nothing hurts a road trip more than whiny passengers. Well, folks, I hope this has been helpful. With proper preparation before the trip, packing correctly, keeping the right things in the car, you're going to really mitigate the risks of having a breakdown. You're going to increase your safety and hopefully increase the enjoyment and fun relaxation of everybody in your family so you can enjoy that summer road trip. Be safe, everyone. I'm out of here.
The Straight Shift Podcast is copyright LeeAnn Shattuck, The Car Chick, 2017. All views expressed by guest and or co-hosts are those of the guest and or co-hosts, and not necessarily those of LeeAnn Shattuck or The Car Chick.